My daughter's actually sitting here with us in her first Formula SAE comp, and she's telling me there's over the radio we're going to concentrate on the building of the cars and the correct use of language. She's probably been exposed to a bit of language in the workshop.
Excellent.
Not quite getting a good run there. They won't be happy with that. That was a 6.6. So points on the board, but that's not a run that they'll be looking for. They'll be looking to come back and improve on that. Well, I think my daughter has a great point with her focusing on the build of these cars. As much as it's great being at this competition, the real hard work and all the time put in is done throughout the year, and there's a lot that goes on in the build of these cars. It's not always easy working with a large group of people. You're not always friends with everybody, but you have to get along and pull in the same direction. And it really is a project management competition more than it is a racing competition. So managing people and managing the technical aspects and all the resources that you've got to deal with. So we have University of Queensland lining up again, hoping to do their second run.
Yeah, sorry for being away from the mic there for a little bit. We now have another monitor which is a little bit closer to me and I can read the times. I couldn't quite read it. Your young eyes were quite able to read down the other end. But coming back out to the start line is car E48, University of Queensland. E42, when I get the... See, there's a problem with my eyes.
Oh, that's a very strong launch.
Wow.
That is impressive. A 3.8665. A sub 4 time. That's an excellent time from UQ. That'll be very hard to beat.
It will. I reckon there's a hill climber in that car.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that first one. They probably let all the beans for the second one. That's exactly what you want off that launch, Phil. Just getting a little bit of wheel spin. I think there's even more in that. I think that probably that second phase of that run looks like they could even get a little bit more traction down. But what a run.
That was fantastic. And it's a car with aero, so they're throwing away some electrons in the pursuit of downforce. Well, I noticed that the wings are set very flat for the acceleration test.
Hey, you two guys, give us a wave. No way.
Well, they're too
intense.
Self-intense.
That's absolutely fantastic. To think that a time that good this early on bodes well for the competition. And we have the Honda Technical College up again.
And we'll see what sort of acceleration we can get out of an internal combustion engine. Bogged down a little off the start.
Yeah, they seem to be having issues with their motor there.
Yeah, they do.
It's just not revving up. Unfortunately, a 7-second run, worse than their first one.
But that's all right, Kevin. They'll be back to their garage and they'll look at all of their data and try and rectify that issue.
Yeah, the thing I love about watching these teams and the team members competing here is there's no sense of giving up in these competitions, and the friendliness between teams, offering assistance and helping out is there. Everyone here will want to be seeing that car running at its fastest this weekend.
Absolutely, the guys have put in a huge effort to be here, let alone build the car beforehand. So,
well, I think UQ's throwing down the gauntlet here, and we've got Adelaide University coming back out. Now, their first two runs were incredibly close, so UQ had a 4.3 before they did that amazing 3.8. And that's currently what University of Adelaide is running at, or Adelaide University.
Yep.
And from the looks of it, they've got the same sort of power. And we've got the ECU car lining up. ECU have done pretty well in the combustion acceleration in the past, winning it for a few years. Not that I'm biased at all. Oh, look, that's a bit of wheel spin. They've got that second phase going.
And it sung towards the end of the
A 4.17. So that's a good reduction. That's almost 0.15 of a second.
Yep.
Off their previous time. So that's a good improvement.
That's got them in second spot so far.
Yeah. And of course, these are running as separate classes. So the EVs are running in a class of their own, and the petrols are in another class. So currently, the petrols is being led by the Honda Technical College, being the only IC car to run so far.
And we have another internal combustion vehicle coming up. Now, are you game to breathe while this one goes, Kevin?
Oh, I've got my heart in my chest. For those of you that don't know, we actually had a massive engine failure on Monday, and didn't think we'd be here today. So the team's absolutely over the moon that they've been able to put this here. But you do pay a price for having to do late rebuilds, and we're hoping that price isn't going to be paid this weekend. Yeah, that wasn't a solid launch.
A lot of potential showing there, though, Kevin.
Yeah, that was still a 4.56. So we're happy with that sort of banking time, and we saw how bad that launch was. So I think that could be a flat 4 or maybe even a sub 4 if that gets a decent launch. But I don't think I'd be too far off the mark saying that won't be close to a competitive time in the IC cars. We haven't seen the really quick IC cars come out yet for acceleration, but that won't hold number one spot for very long.
Really pleasing to see that everybody's applauding each of the cars as they come back to. Everybody appreciating the efforts of all of the other teams.
Yeah, and we have Adelaide University lining up again.
They're
I really like this
greedy,
car.
aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're getting these runs in early, and they're going to be well positioned to take advantage of those acceleration runs later in. Oh, and not a great start. No, something's gone on there. And look, I think, Phil, this speaks to what you were saying earlier, is that you get out early, and as horrible as it is to have a problem like this now, it gives them some time to fix that issue and maybe even come back and do some runs a bit later in this event.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got a few cars lining up now. We're seeing UQ's petrol car. They've got a pretty good history in this acceleration as well. And we've got, it actually looks like, I can't quite pick who that is. We've got an electric, E85 car. So
E85 is...
That's Wollongong.
Well spotted.
So Wollongong have won this competition in the past a couple of times.
See the University of New South Wales there in car 15 as well. So
I'm hoping to see Curtin out here sometime soon. It feels like it's Eastern States versus the West at the moment. There's only one showing. So ECU lining up for their second run. They'll be looking for a much better launch than they got the last time. that's a very strong launch.
Great start. The change of gear looked a little bit
Yeah, didn't
tardy,
quite
though.
get the change of gear, but that was a 4.17. That's a solid banking run.
It is.
4.17. I've got Josh here from our team sort of holding his ear open, say, talk a bit louder, make sure this... was all...
Looked, oh goodness, I got off the stage. So,
there's only 2 gears in that car,
okay.
so he only has to do it once.
Now I can tell you of a hill climb car that only had 2 gears, and that was Peter Hollinger's hill climb car.
Okay.
Most hill climbs he took off the start line in top gear.
Oh, wow. No, that's great. That's exactly what the team was hoping, is get some points, dynamic points, and that pressure is now completely off. And UNSW, I think this isn't running as big a motor.
Looks to be tall geared too, as he took the car out towards the start line area. He might have to give it plenty of revs to drop the clutch and get the bite without bogging it down.
Yeah, and we have this UQ car, and I think they'll be going for 1 and 1 in both classes. They're not quite running the same motor size they were when they used to do really fast acceleration times. So,
okay.
But this is a team that knows how to get a good launch, knows how to do the event. They're a very strong team, UQ. So this is UNSW ADFA lined up. Been a long-term competitor in this competition, and they've produced some really interesting cars.
Yeah, my recollection is that they did quite well last year. I may be recalling things incorrectly, but I think that they did quite well.
Oh, a solid launch. A couple of hesitations on the gear changings there.
Yeah.
4.8. I think if they can mix that launch with a bit of better run down the line, they'll come back with a good time. Currently sitting in second place in the IC class. I love the sticker on the back of this U car, lawnmower intensifiers. Bit of a joke around the grid that all the single cylinders sound a bit like lawnmowers.
It's a bit harsh.
Yeah, so, well, they've claimed it to their own, so
Absolutely.
UQ, I'm sure after they do this run, they'll be happy to come round to your backyard and chop your grass for you.
There's some interesting ducting on the radiators on this car too. I had a chat with them yesterday down in the pits, and spent quite a bit of time in designing up the airflow through those radiators. So the radiators are quite small.
Yeah. I think they're directing those to try and get a little bit of aerodynamic effect on the rear wing as well. Now, UQ have built 2 quite narrow cars here, so really designing the cars for, taking a tight line throughout the track. And that's one of the compromises that teams have to go, is you go a bit wider on the cars, you can get a bit more downforce, and it works well in some of the places, like the sweeping turns and the skid pad.
Yep.
But then you really suffer in the chicanes. Australia is pretty well known for having tighter tracks than a lot of the competitions in the world. So you probably see a bit more narrow cars in Australia than we do in some of the other comps. He's put that in gear.
We've unfortunately stalled on the start line, so we'll restart.
Oh, I hope he didn't break the line there with that bit of a hop at the start.
I think he may have.
But a 4.5, that's quite respectable. Good first run.
Perhaps he didn't break the beam. So
No, well done. They absolutely wouldn't have broken the beam with that time.
No.
So that's quite a good time for a first time out for a single cylinder car. They'll be pretty happy with that. And UNSW had a 4.8, and Edith Cowan at the moment in IC leading with a 4.17. But nothing close so far to that amazing time from UQ in the EV with a 3.86, which is Currently fastest overall and definitely fastest of the EV class.
Yeah, and it's looking like that may take a bit to catch, actually.
Yeah, I think it'll. The teams will be really on it if they manage to get that. Some of the electric cars around the world are pretty fast in their acceleration, and the world acceleration record on a normal road is held by a Formula student car. And has been traded around. I think the Europeans have been trading that record around. So there's nothing second rate around these Formula cars. I would say probably some of the most advanced electric racing cars in the world are Formula student cars. So we have UNSW ADFA lined up for another run. We're seeing UNSW lined up as well. Wollongong ready to come out. And we also have Griffith University. I'll also show a little bit of favouritism to Griffith. They're a team at Curtin, at ECU that we look to as being a really competitive team. And the attitude they bring to this competition of really building finely turned out cars that actually run and run fast. Griffith are a team that we admire quite a lot. I think every team here has a few other teams that they admire and they look to.
Absolutely.
So UNSW ADFA lined up for another run. But we can really see here, Phil, there's a lot of cars now lined up, getting ready to take a run.
There's lots of activity further back down through the pit area there too. There's people around their cars.
Oh, and I think this is what I love to see after the stress of the Friday and the static events where everyone's running around and dealing with maybe some harsh words from judges or maybe some kind words from judges to get out here and actually put the cars on track. This is the part I love about the competition.
The cream on the cake.
Yeah, well, I think as engineers, it's not just about the calculations, it's about making it work. And that's a solid launch.
Absolutely.
Oh, talking about
Good
making it work. Great run.
Great run through.
That's a 4.29. Amazing run there. They'll be very happy with that. That was an excellent run, Phil. You could really see they just nailed every gear change there. It was a solid launch.
It was good.
I think that's... I'd be surprised if we see much more out of it, given the engine size. I can't imagine that they'd be anything but ecstatic with that run.
Do you know what the engine size is in that car?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the smaller ones. Mm-hmm. I can only go by the sound, but if somebody from ADFA wants to tell us what they're running, that definitely sounds like one of the singles. Now, the singles, of course, have a massive fuel economy advantage. So they know at the end of the event that they've got a few points in hand of anyone that's decided to run a bit more capacity.
Yeah, so there's that compromise coming back yet again.
Absolutely. An old competitor of mine, Jeff Pearson, was with his team in RMIT. They were the first to really take advantage of that fuel. Oh, well done. Look at this. Beautiful car. Now this is one to really pay attention to. This is UQ. They'll be trying to get ahead of UNSW ADFA with that, and probably trying to get ahead of Edith Cowan at
the moment. Yeah, at this point they'd like to be the leader on the tree.
Oh, great launch, solid gear changes. Doesn't quite have that end pace. And at 4.59.
It seemed to be lacking a little bit up the top end of the track there.
Yeah, I don't think they could have got much better off the line on that one. So it was a really good launch.
It was.
But I don't know if that's being limited by engine power up there. I think the gear changes sounded okay.
They did.
It really puts into perspective just what UNSW ADFA did then. running a very similar engine. And that sort of time is really impressive for a single cylinder. Yeah, so University of Wollongong, they've been past champions of this competition with petrol classes. They were the first to really show the rest of the world how well Australia could do, winning the US very early on in the history of this competition that's been running 20 years in Australia. Made the switch to electric. They're quite a brave move when you've had a lot of success with running the petrol cars.
Yeah, there's major change in the general configuration of the vehicle.
What a launch. Fantastic launch.
Whoosh.
Good power.
All the power and all the way through.
And a 4.21. What a first run there. That's an amazing run by University of Wollongong there. And there's a lot of potential in that car, Phil.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely fantastic to see that sort of performance.
It was, and it's a great day for it too. We've got not much in the way of wind, and the sun's sort of filtering through those wispy clouds that are up there, so temperature is quite good. Track temperature will be good.
Okay, UNSW here. So University of New South Wales, a long-term competitor. They've had some pretty nice cars over the years.
And a good round of applause there for the Wollongong team as they push back through.
And well deserved, what a run.
Oh, nice start.
Good gear changes.
Might have backed off the throttle a little early at the finish line there.
Well, they haven't given much time. That was a 4.23.
Wow.
That's a really solid run, and you can see that they don't quite have the power of, say, ECU there, but that launch was absolutely spot on.
Absolutely. And setting a car up to be able to do a good launch is a critical part of the event as well, because, or any design of your car, if it doesn't get off the start line, you're going to be well back before you get to turn one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the trick there? You get the car to do a bit of squat at the back and a bit of weight transfer over those back wheels?
Yeah, well, I'd be reluctant to give you too much information there, Phil, given that there's a bit of, I think, development work that's gone into the ECU car, which can normally run 3.8s. But yeah, it really is about getting some load on those rear tyres early on, and there are ways to do that, I guess, in transient. So you can get you can get cases when you're running where your total load on all your tyres is higher than your vehicle weight and aero download. And it really can only happen in a transient moment, and it's about hooking that up with the right time in the launch.
Right.
And really those first couple of metres is where a really fast run is decided.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is Griffith with an IC car. This should be a good run. These guys know how to build a car that runs.
Beautifully presented car.
Oh, absolutely amazingly put together. And this competition really is a compromise between design and development. There's no good having an amazing design that isn't implemented well, and there's no point implementing a design that's not done well. It's a great learning experience for the students as they go through.
And of course, even if you've designed something that's not quite right, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the great thing about this from an engineering education point of view is it's closing the loop. They get to see the end result of what they've designed.
Yep.
And that feeds back into the next design.
Plenty of room.
Oh, a solid launch.
Great launch.
Good gear change. That'll be
Absolutely.
a good time. A 4.06, and they are now leading the IC class. Amazing first run.
That was a great run.
Oh, they'll be trying to set that up to try and go sub 4, and frankly,
Absolutely.
a sub 4 in IC is hugely impressive.
And they're very close to that.
They're very close.
Very
I think
close
it's there. I don't know what they could have done a bit more. Maybe maybe have a second run straight away and keep some sort of temperature in the tyres, but that looked about as good as you could get, or as good as we've seen so far.
Yeah, you mentioned temperature in the tyres. Of course, there's no tyre cleaning allowed here, so getting a second run in fairly quickly could be the benefit of a little bit extra heat in the tyres.
Absolutely. It doesn't look like teams have got a real opportunity to loop back quite quickly, so you do lose that temperature quite fast. But even a couple of degrees on these tyres can mean quite a big difference in grip. These tyres are generally, the rubber compounds are close to rain rubber compounds, and so are designed to run at pretty low temperatures. So even a couple of degrees can make a big friction difference. And we'll see that even as the day heats up a little bit, you should get your faster times towards the end.
Provided, of course, that they don't overheat.
Yeah, and provided, of course, that no team drops a bit of oil.
Oh, yes.
We've got Monash lined up with both the electric car and the petrol car. Monash have won so often here that it's sort of expected from them, so they've got a lot of pressure on them. And people lined up to see what they've bought. And this year they've really changed their cars up quite a lot, and they've gone composite for the...
Oh, great launch.
Fantastic launch there.
Just runs out of it a little bit down towards the end of the track, but what time?
4.23.
Yeah,
it's
good.
a slight improvement. Really good run.
Yeah.
That's very close to University of Wollongong here.
So we have the Monash Electric coming out first up. Or next up.
Yeah, they've chopped a lot of weight out of their electric car this year, and they always do a lot of testing, generally around about 1,000 kilometres per car before they get out. And you can really see the team that they bring is very professional, and they've been the team that everyone's been chasing really for the last decade.
So Luke, that you were talking about before, would be quite impressed to see his old team doing well.
I think you find some of the alumni are probably most critical of their own teams. But yeah, they're always you've always got a bit of a soft spot for the team that you're involved with, and you always if you're harsh on them, it's always because you just want to see them do better.
Correct.
You can see the wings on this opened up to reduce the drag as much as possible. You actually get an advantage in downforce in the very early parts of the acceleration, but you don't want to be running that drag by the time you get to about halfway down. And you can see the approach they've taken with two very similarly designed cars. They've actually produced 3 cars this year, Phil, with a driverless car that we're doing a demonstration later.
Yeah, I had a look at that yesterday, and it's an interesting looking arrangement with LiDAR and all sorts of bits and pieces on it to control the vehicle as it would head around.
Oh, a good initial launch, but then it sort of bogged up in the second part. Got the power.
Yeah, hooked up towards the end, a 4.22. They'll be looking to do better than that.
Yeah, I think they will do better than that. It was just that second phase of the launch. Had a good wheel spin at the start, good bite, and then just sort of bogged down there. This is their IC car.
And of course this car running the Goodyear tyres that you were mentioning earlier. Quite a few of the teams running the Hoosiers. And I see quite a few of the Goodyears around too, so great start.
Oh, solid launch. This will be a good time. A 3.88.
3.88. That is
Sub-4.
absolutely.
What a run.
That was a brilliant run. I don't think we would have seen an IC car go that quick before.
No, I think that's probably going to be the winning time. I'm not sure that anybody's going to really be able to match that. I think maybe Griffiths might have a shot, maybe ECU if they sort out whatever gremlins, but that looks like it's the winning time just then.
Yeah, big round of applause as he comes back.
What a run.
A 3.88. Awesome stuff.
And that's with a single cylinder, Phil. That's they're
Imagine if it had more bangers in there.
Well, I don't think you would have really gone any quicker than that. I think they've really tuned that. I think this team has put a huge amount of effort in. I know it's been a great year for them. Talking to their faculty advisor, Scott, he's been in this comp about as long as you can possibly imagine. He's been really proud of the team and what they've achieved this year and how hard they've pushed. I think they've really just shown what they're coming here to do this weekend.
And just looking at those tyres, they look as if they've actually been working. So
yeah, the Goodyears have good initial bite. That was a bit better on that second stage there. A 4.17, so a slight improvement. Still having that little bit of a bog down after the initial launch.
It did.
One of the impressive things about how they run their team is they don't run a separate electric team and a separate combustion team. They are one team, and Scott was saying that they didn't even, some of these students didn't even know which car they'd be working on, just a small amount of time out from this comp.
Awesome. That adds a good mix into the learning process, because you have to learn far greater aspects of things and not just one car. So,
well, I'll tell you what, that 3.88 that they did that previous run, that will be putting fear into international teams around the world. It hasn't been an event that they've been doing that sort of world-class timing before, but there's nobody in the world doing those sorts of times.
Another great start. Don't think it was as quick as the last one.
Didn't look quite as quick, but 3.93. It's pretty amazing that you think a 3.93, not quite as quick as the first one. Yeah, I think they just absolutely nailed that first run.
And you know what amazes me is it's also interesting to note that it's not very much difference in time, but visually we can pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We also see University of Auckland lined up, and University of Queensland Electric is ready to go, and we've got UTS going out for another run. You can see the runs are coming in thick and fast now.
Now, once this car's gone through, I've got a student here from the University of Adelaide. I'll have a bit of a chat with him. So we'll just wait until his car gets out and goes through its run. And E59 out to the start line now.
Yeah, and we also see our Auckland boys lining up. Solid launch, but this car's really only coming on in that second half of the run.
Yeah.
Not quite that aggressive launch that they would have wanted, but they are 4.37 with that. There's quite a respectable acceleration time.
Now, I've got a young student here from Adelaide University. Please introduce yourself.
So, hello everyone, I'm Daniel, team leader of the Adelaide Uni Motorsport team, and I'm a third year mechanical engineering student.
Fantastic. Now, how's things been going with the car? It's all been nice and easy run so far?
Yeah, so we had 3 very good runs. So first runs we actually did it on all tyres because we've been having some launch issues and weren't sure if we were even going to spin them up, but I think as everyone could see, we had quite a bit of wheel spin on all of our runs, which worked out well. So yeah, last 2 runs we had a new set of tyres on the rear and it improved by about 0.2 seconds, and now we're just changing some settings so our car can possibly push the limits a bit more.
Great stuff. Now, what would you think would be the most unique aspect of the car that you've got out there today?
I mean, it's not a very nice one, but we are definitely the loudest EV out there, so that's just simply due to our chain setup, but something we take some pride in, and at least we know when our car is running on track, and it's quite a unique noise it makes. But
a bit of mechanical music, always good. Listen, thanks very much for popping in. We'll watch this next car go through, car E47.
Oh, solid launch there from Auckland. This looks like a really good first run. Oh, losing it a little bit on that back end.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed with that end of the run. It was a 4.53, but I think up until the second half it was going to be quite a bit faster.
It was. Now, Kevin, you've probably got some questions you could ask this young lad.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about the value of testing and so on. How much have you guys been out this year?
So we've been out a bit less than we hoped for, but we have got the car running about 8 weeks before competition, and I believe that means we had about 1 test day a week, so 8 test sessions, and just before the weekend at comp we ran a full endurance, which we were quite happy with. So now it's just onto this event, and testing is where everything happens. Even here, while running acceleration, we're essentially testing what setup the car is most happy with in terms of the grip levels, because launch is quite a tricky situation for us, and I believe for essentially all the electric vehicles here. So Monash weren't quite that fast off the line, neither were the other teams, so it's just getting that initial phase right when the initial current goes into the motor and seeing how much power we can get down at that stage without some of our safety systems tripping. So.
Well, that's pretty impressive. I mean, 8 weeks before comp, that's nothing to be sneezed at. A lot of these cars are just being finished, a couple of weeks before. And you mentioned you were third year as the team leader. Are you quite a young team at the moment?
Actually, we are not. So we are about in a second year cycle with last year's team. So that was our first ever electric vehicle, and we're very lucky that essentially all key members of the team stayed on for this year. So we have also developed the car according to that. It's been a 2-year process with most of our work being carried over and just improving where it needs to be improving.
Cool, thank you very much for that. That was a pretty wild run there.
It was. Tail flicked out and whizzed down the track. Still managed a 4.13.
Yeah, 4.13, and I think the driver there thought he was on the skid pad. Well, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that, and wish you the best for the weekend.
Yeah, thank you guys, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Here's the other West Australian team that's competing. UWA, of course, have an electric car here they've been working on for a while, but they don't have they weren't able to sort out some issues with the accumulator, so Curtin will be the only other West Australian team running. They've been pretty constant competitors the last few years and have had some pretty good results. And I know they've had a fair amount of track time with this car, so they should be set up for a good weekend.
Car looks to be really well sorted out, and I like the presentation of the car. The layout looks good. Attention to detail's good.
Yeah, they do know how to build them. So I think that UQ team, they know they've got that really good electric time before with that 3.8, and you could see they were really going for it in that run, trying to get just that little bit more.
I see UQ doing a little bit of adjustment to something there, using the laptop as the car rolls back through. Putting in the hot mixture in the electrics.
Oh, solid launch from Curtin there. A little bit on the tail end, but that should be a good time. A 4.1787. A great first run.
Great effort.
That's actually 0.0001 faster than Edith Cowan, so they're in third place at the moment. It doesn't get any closer than that, does it, Phil?
It doesn't, no. That is incredibly close. E42 with a great launch. Oh, whoosh, gone. It seemed to lose maybe, no.
Well, 3.89 there, so just that 0.01 off their previous time. What a run. Looks like we've got the electric car from RMIT lining up to wait to come on. But right now we have University of Wollongong. And a pretty strong 4.21 already. So they'll be looking to improve on that. It looks quite competitive in this EV class on acceleration. It's amazing how far this class has come in the competition, that the times are really starting to drop as people really wrap their minds around getting these things to work. And look like they've got the edge on the petrol cars.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how they go in the skid pan later on in the day.
Oh, some of these cars can run torque vectoring, which is a huge advantage on track, especially in those transient motions. So the electric cars in Formula SAE, Formula Student have really got the performance advantage now. Oh, solid launch, a little bit sideways. Look at the power of that thing, Phil.
Yeah, carried through to the end of the track quite well. The hook-up going right through to the finish line looked good with a 4.31.
Yeah, that little bit of sideways at that start would have cost them that little bit of time.
Yeah, I think we measure that as a smidgen.
Is that the official way of measuring that?
Used to be in the old days. Just not a smidge more of this or a smidge more of that.
Curtin back. They'll be looking to improve on that time. Fantastic first time out for them with a 4.17.
Great start.
Solid launch. I think the previous start was probably a little bit stronger, but a good run, a 4.20. So just that little bit off that. I think that was in that very first launch section there.
Yeah, of course, rolling resistance is something that might come to play here a bit as well. Not using the front wheels during turning and what have you. Likely to pump those front tyres up a little bit tighter than you normally would.
Yeah, you'd normally put a bit more air in the front tyres. There's a little bit you can do around bearings and greases and repacking and so on to reduce a bit of rolling resistance, and you do take that at a cost of reliability. So you can do a repack for your bearings with lightweight oil. The bearings won't last as long, but they do reduce friction quite a lot. But those are really little fiddles. I think the main thing is focusing on getting just that really solid launch.
Absolutely.
That was a good run. 2 solid runs by Curtin. I'll be pretty happy with that. So UNSW Adfa back. You can see a bit of a line back now. It looks like everyone is getting lined up.
Everybody who's going to have a go is going to have a go. UNSW launches.
Good launch. Bogged down a little bit straight after the launch and didn't really have that upper end, but that's a 5.17. You can really see that was quite a bit off what they got before.
The initial couple of feet there, speaking old money, the initial couple of metres were pretty good, and then just that little bit of bog down. So
yeah, that's that bog down phase where you've got to get enough wheel spin that you can push past that bog down phase, and that's where you really want to have. As the car starts to transfer weight rearwards, you get a little bit more grip on those tyres, and there's a tendency to bog down. So you really want to try and move that weight transfer as soon as you possibly can. So there's a few little fiddles you can do with suspension and damping tunings and so on to get that extra load right at the beginning, and it helps push through that bog down phase. As soon as you see that, you see a solid launch, a bit of wheel spin, and then that immediate bog down straight after, you know you're going to drop a good 0.1, 0.2 off your run. These cars, of course, don't really have the power of the drag cars and so on to be able to push through that.
No.
So you have to use the momentum of the drivetrain.
They're quite incredible, some of those drag cars. You see the amount of flex in the tyre walls, and as they flatten the bottom edge or the edge or bottom piece of the tyre out to get as much grip on the surface of the track as they can. And that can lead to some other issues if they start to get a bit of bounce and they have to lift.
Yeah, they're quite impressive cars. And we had a couple of students that were working on top fuelers, and they would say if you stuffed up that first part, so just the first second, and they had to get out of the engine, you would still do a 6.5, even if you're not powering down for most of the run. It's just amazing how quickly they pick up speed. We see University of Wollongong here, fairly solid run.
4.47.
Yeah, sorry, UNSW Sydney, a 4.47.
Yeah.
So we call that a solid run. That's good points in the bag.
First, what you were just talking about there with the grade cars highlights the fact that those initial couple of feet from the start line are just so vitally important for your overall time.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a lot of the people in drag racing that I remember as our team, we came back from a UK comp, and I think we'd done something like a 4-second run. There we go, UNSW, good wheel spin up the start. Yeah, a bit of a muff gear change about halfway down, and a 4.8. Yeah, so we had a car that was capable of doing 4 seconds flat, and had done that and won acceleration in Australia before. And it was really, how do you go a little bit further than that? Are these cars capable of anything more? And that used to be the standard. For a 4-second acceleration run would win just about any competition in the world in IC. And I was really talking to the drag guys and some of the tricks that they had. It was just pure car development, and you were able to lop off about 0.2 of a second. So I think that speaks to what you were talking about before, Phil, about engaging people out in motorsport and out in industry and seeing how they do things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is the first run for an RMIT. They've both got an electric car and a petrol car this year. This is their electric car lined up. These guys got out pretty early and done a few Ks, and I think they're looking pretty good for this weekend. RMIT have been previous champions in this competition and have won some competitions internationally. That was quite a while ago now, but it's great to see that they've really clawed back up and have become a really strong team.
Yeah, I know young Paul Scalzo was a part of their winning team that went to the UK years ago. He's one of the race engineers up at Brad Jones Racing up in Albury. So yet another connection within Formula SAE, and I've actually known young Paul since he was a primary school student, so got to see his growth through the whole thing.
Yeah, they were a pretty amazing team back then. But, the comp has moved on. It's definitely a harder comp now. The level of general competition has risen so much. There's no chance to luck into a win these days. You go to any comp, there's enough teams running at the top that one of them's going to finish. So you've got to push a lot harder than you used to.
And the old story is, it doesn't matter how good you are, eventually you will find someone who's better than you.
Yeah.
Ooh, car seemed to do a little bit of a jump and then nothing.
And I think when we see teams like Monash have been successful for so long, it really just shows that they've been able to ride that success. A bit of a bog down at the start there, but great power on that car.
That was quite fast at the finish of 3.96.
So second fastest EV run, and that was with it bogging down off the launch there. That's an amazing run. I reckon they'll be pushing pretty hard to take UQ's lead in this event.
Absolutely, I reckon they're going to come back and have another run straight away and probably try and knock that one off the billiard table.
Yeah, I think that's more than possible. I'd be expecting that they've got a bit more in that car. So UNSW number 63 coming back for another run.
And of course there's driver changes going on here too, Kevin. Can you explain to us, unfamiliar with the processes here, how these driver changes are a part of SAE?
Yeah, well, I think it's not just one driver you're taking out. In the acceleration, each team will run two different drivers. Usually one's a bit better than the other, and they'll run them second. But it's great to see that the teams don't just get to design and build these, but also get to race them. That was a pretty solid launch there. Good gear changes. This should be a solid run. Yeah, this is a 4.36, so they've improved their previous time. That's a very solid run for that car. They'd be happy with that.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
And the RMIT car coming back again, and it's a management problem apparently, according to the rear wing. So,
well, if you've got a problem in a team, it's always good to pass it off to somebody else. So, yeah, it's always a difficult balance between how you manage things, manage your resources, how you manage your technical resources.
I do like those groovy brake lights on the end plates of the rear wing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We all know if it's got a lot of LEDs on it, it's likely to go faster. So let's see how it goes.
Car in the middle of the screen on your viewfinder. Yeah, middle third.
Lightning emitting diodes.
I'd be worried that they'd be losing a few electrons out there. Maybe they're just using those electrons for thrust.
Could be. Yeah, they might be laser thrusters. You're getting a bit Star Wars-esque here, I think, Kevin.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of anything science fiction, and they certainly look science fiction. ECU lined up. They've obviously gone away and had a look at their issues, and they wouldn't have been happy completely with a 4.17, a good banker, but they'd want to go faster, especially with how well Monash has done in IC. I can't see them taking that down that time, though. I think that 3.88 is probably going to hold as the IC time.
The benchmark time.
And this really gives Monash a huge advantage here, is that, one, they've got a time like that. They don't need to worry. They don't need to chase this event anymore. People are chasing them.
Yeah, that's right. And
it's a real mental change for these guys, because if you're on the back foot and you're trying to get that trophy, you're always trying to get that little bit of an edge. It's just that bit of extra stress. So they've started their dynamic events off with about as good as they could have hoped. We've got a bit of a hold up here with RMIT.
Yeah, it just seems to be a little bit difficult getting it into the proper location or something. I'm not too sure.
I think we've got a hold up at the end of the
I think you're
end
right.
of the acceleration. And this again is why it's a really good idea to get out early. You never know what's going to happen with the events. As more cars run, there's more chance of a failure somewhere, and you're never guaranteed that if you get through the gates late that you're going to get a run.
Yes, I was at an event recently where one of the vehicles had such an extensive disassembly of the engine in the middle of one corner that all of its oil, some 6 odd litres, was in the middle of the track. It became unattainable to run the rest of the event. So,
I've seen that at many of these events, that it'll be running smoothly, then a team manages to drop some oil, and then lap times drop. Well, rather they raise.
Yes, if you can drop your lap times on oil, you're doing something wrong in the first place.
Well, it's good to have oil in the car rather than out of the car.
Usually preferred.
Yeah, one of our alumni who works on engines at Mostec, so puts the engines on supercars for Penske. He was quite fond of keeping oil in the engines, and highly recommended it. So there's some tips from the experts.
I do recall the days of the old red motor Holdens, and everybody used to talk about they used to have either alternator trouble or starter motor trouble. The Conrod came out and knocked it off.
I'm still in the process of teaching Jason.
Yeah, I used to own a Volkswagen Beetle, and I think the motor was less of a motor and more of an oil filter. You'd put some in, and then you'd go and collect it off the driveway later in the evening.
line in the
We're
middle.
ready to go.
Between
I've seen the
car.
green flag
All
for the RMIT car launches. Good acceleration and carries it right through to the end.
Whoa, the braking on there, a bit squirrely under brakes there. That was a 3.92. Really solid run.
Obviously, you're a little taller than me. I wasn't able to quite see the braking area here. We've got plenty of heads out to our left here, which is fantastic to see.
Right, where's the car?
Yeah, the end speed of that car would have been really impressive. It's a shame we don't have a trap speed on that,
So I
because I think
basically
that probably would have been about the
know
fastest
where it
over
is, right?
over the timing line there that
I don't
of
need
any
to
of
be around here
cars.
looking at it, right? I can
Yeah,
just see
track
through
speed
my
would be
eyes
very
where the
interesting
car
on
is
all
here.
of these cars,
So I'm
actually,
set
just to
already
see what the
to
differences
catch it as
are.
it comes past.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any car go as quick over that line as RMIT, and I think if they could sort out that initial launch, solid launch from Monash there.
See, now that was zoomed in too
Amazing
far.
to get this sort of speed out of a single cylinder, and a 3.86.
Oh,
New fastest
yeah.
time.
Well done.
That is now the fastest time of the whole event, including the EVs.
Yeah.
Now ECU are coming back out.
That's really warming up the front end of the competition.
Oh, absolutely. They made it. They were a very successful team running the CBR engines in the day, and made an early switch to the single cylinder. And one of the teams to be a single cylinder with big aero. And I think the years of development are really paying off. That engine is absolutely firing on all cylinder.
Brilliant
solid launch.
That was a brilliant start for
And a
Eric.
3.96 by ECU. They're coming into the party only 1/10 off.
Go and all around in one go.
Oh, if they can, I think there was probably a bit on the gear change
See, because he's stopped.
there, but that's a good run.
If I go, see where it's going to get tricky.
It looks like it's held up there.
because I'm going to be doing two actions at once.
They'll be very happy with that acceleration run. It's a blown engine on the Monday. Have it repaired, and the car wasn't together again till 3 a.m. on the Thursday morning of the comp.
Like I'm showing
Really lost all that development time to go out and do a sub 4. The team is pretty ecstatic with that. That's an absolutely amazing run. Monash again, a solid launch. Oh, it looked a little bit bogged down at that start.
So,
But a 3.8638, slightly better the run again.
Yeah, it was deceptive. The start made it look as if it might have been down, but no, it wasn't. It was a quicker run.
Curtin here, ready to go again.
A little bit smoother on your transition from the car, but going down the pit straight to the car waiting at the start.
that's what he means by that.
What a run.
Big round of applause.
Congratulations, Monash.
Well
I've
done.
gone across too quick.
Curtin lining up. Solid start there.
That looked a bit like a line locker might have been implied.
Yeah, 4.39 there. That was I hadn't seen that before, Phil. That was absolutely zero motion with a bit of a slip there. It didn't really help them on the time. Well, that's certainly something interesting.
So, it's what I'm trying to do, right, instead of fully concentrating on
Yeah, it looked a little bit like as if they'd applied some
the
sort of a
actual car,
line
I'm
locker
looking
on the
at cursor
brakes,
here and
dropped
trying
the
to
clutch
keep
and
that
then
on the
released
car.
the
So my
brake.
focus is on the cursor,
And
not actually on the car.
I think that may have just bogged the engine down a little bit,
That's a cursor,
rather than
it's called a
letting it
cursor.
just spin up.
Yeah, it didn't. I think they really lost that momentum just over the line. And it just shows how hard it is to get that really solid run. And I think what we're seeing with that Monash run is just the amount of testing they have done and how well that has worked for them. ECU lining up again. There are unlimited runs here
That's experience. Right?
a bit later on.
And trying it. Because Stuart will talk to you and tell you.
Great start again.
Solid launch.
So you're walking, shaking the camera.
Oh,
Try
and ran it.
I'm
And a
just getting you to watch my
3.82,
technique.
they've taken the
Oh,
lead.
you don't,
Just,
right.
what a run, 3.82.
That is phenomenal stuff.
I
I'm trying to make it flow.
Hey, Phil, do you reckon we can get these
So,
mics
watch him
outside?
just
Would I be able to
stand
do a bit of a wander and speak to the driver
Absolutely.
there?
You know
Let's
where
go.
my camera's pointing.
Why hang
So,
around in
you
here?
know
It's
pointing
only air
straight
conditioned
out,
in
right?
here.
Yeah.
If you want,
What a run. What a competition we're having.
Fantastic stuff.
Two giants in the competition running at it.
once I get to once you pick up on the knack,
What a
you'll
run.
know
I'm
that
just going to try and
you'll
get the
start
driver here.
You're going to end there every
3.82
time.
there.
You'll get to know
Are
where
you
you
happy
start
with the
and
run?
end, because the camera.
Oh, yeah, could be better, but, you know, you always
That's what
try.
the camera's doing.
Yeah, well, I happen to know Adam here. He's a lovely fella, but we know he's driving and there's no way he can do better. So the gauntlet's still there.
What it's doing is I'm going
Just going to grab the team leader here for Liam.
See how the camera's
Yeah, you had an engine rebuild earlier in the week. You're Monday and everything's looking pretty horrible and wondering whether you're even going to get there. What does it feel like to put in have a run like that go down early?
I think when the engine failure happened on Monday night, we sort of accepted that we were going to have a pretty rough week, and everyone sort of gathered together, and we got the motivation, and everyone's worked tirelessly for the last week to try and get it repaired. So to be in this event at all is a bonus. So, you know, the guys have just done an amazing job, and it's a great feeling to be doing well.
Get on there.
Well, we haven't got it yet. Monash pretty keen to come back. We've also got a couple of guys from UQ here. Well, why don't you speak to us about that amazing run you've had on that electric? That was a huge speed you guys showed with that electric car.
Yeah, it was pretty good actually. We're pretty impressed with the time. Yeah, I think there's still a little bit more to eke out. We're about to drop a little bit more in driver weight, so yeah, pretty keen to see that happen.
Yeah, I've heard your driver's got an unhealthy obsession with dairy. Do you think that's affected the run at all?
Yes, most certainly. He had a spaghetti carbonara last night, so he's nice and light now. But no, I think we're pretty well placed for this event, surprisingly, considering the driveline that we've got. So yeah, pretty happy.
Well, frankly, a large pasta meal before an acceleration run just seems a little bit irresponsible. And would you consider that a failure of management?
No, I think that's a perfect management opportunity right there. It was perfectly strategic to place the weight in the right spot.
Oh, well done. Obviously a ballast with Italian food there. It just shows how on top of this competition the UQ guys are. Using a carbonara as ballast. Who would have thought it? Okay, we've...
University.
Hopefully I've still got a link here.
Yes.
I'm going to speak to the Monash guys here. And can I speak to someone about that engine? How the heck did you guys manage to do a run on a single cylinder motor? Oh, there you go. It appears the only secret you need in running a single cylinder 3.8 is apply full throttle. So if you're out there applying 80% throttle on an acceleration run, maybe just go the last 20. So is that Josh?
No, it's a NA. Naturally aspirated.
Yeah, engine, yeah, 3 cylinders, naturally aspirated, not turbocharged. Shows the go the moon with that, knowing what you're into the rest of the day.
Yeah, we sure are. Thank you very much.
Yep. Men, a few words.
Now, while all that was going on, University of Wollongong have recorded a 4.24.
How close can you push that in, Jason?
Oh, we've got Luke Pearson. What an amazing honour it is to have a professional motorsport engineer here without Ian. Could you give us a bit of an insight of what it's like to go from a very successful Formula student team into a very successful sports car racing team?
Honestly, it's not too much different if you get a good group of people around you, and that's one of the key things I learned on the team. If you get the right amount of people and get everyone pulling in the right direction, you can make some amazing things happen. So yeah.
It's really good, and you're coming back here and into these competitions. You seem to be a pretty big supporter of these comps. Do you find that these teams like Audi and so on, are they hiring many people from Formula Student and Formula SAE?
Yeah, absolutely. My entire department when I was at Audi Sport was 90% ex-former student people. So they were making a point of deliberately going to the competitions every year and trying to pick off the top students they could get. And it made a huge difference. Compared that to other race teams and stuff I've heard about and been involved with. It's night and day difference. Like if you have a lot of really enthusiastic, clever young people, you can actually make some significant progress, and you're not just sort of resting on past practices that teams have been doing for 20 years. They come up with some very creative and new solutions to problems that some older generation just aren't even aware of.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we heard some of the advancements even just from UQ there. Are Audi doing any research into the effects of pasta as ballast?
Not yet, but they're probably definitely taking notes.
Yeah, it's amazing. These new technologies getting into racing all of the time, and the students taking this learning with them. So who are the teams? If you were to name a couple of teams here that have really impressed you so far, looking around and judging them, who would your favourites be?
I really enjoy the UQ team. Their EV car, it's pretty impressive, and they've got a lot of knowledge there. So.
Yeah, and if we were to pick an IC team, I mean, obviously apart from Edith Cowan University, who would you be picking?
It's a tough one. Yeah, I've been blinded by the brilliance of the ECU car. Really, it's hard to look past.
Okay, I'll give you the $100 later. So, but I've got to say,
an arm up your back doesn't help, does it, Luke?
Yeah, there's very little we can offer Phil. We can offer here. But really, that run by, I think it's great to see that run by ECU and that 3.82, but it's largely expected. They've been on top of this event for a while with 4, but I think the really big takeaway is it's really amazing what Monash have managed there with a single cylinder and a 3.86. I don't think anybody expected that coming to this comp. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was quite surprised myself. I think they're also quite surprised. So, yeah, well done. They've obviously been working on their acceleration practice this year, and there's definitely some improvements. I'm not sure if it's just down to switching to the Goodyear tyres or some fancy new slip control, but yeah, well done.
Yeah, you must be pretty proud of your old team there. They've done an amazing job, and I think that with the advantages they're going to have in fuel economy and the grip that they always bring and the driver quality they always bring to this, that's a huge start for them for this event. So thanks for joining us, Luke.
No worries. Great to be here.
And we have the University of Wollongong rolling back to the start line. So he has the green light, launches.
Oh, that was a solid launch, Phil. Look at this one.
Good down the bottom end of the track too, and into the braking area.
Look at that top speed, and that's a 4.02. Well done, Wollongong.
Great stuff. That must be using some of that pasta ballast as well, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I think UQ's let the story out of the bag now. All teams will be quickly feeding their drivers a bit of carbonara, maybe a bit of bolognese, and try to avoid the pizza.
Now, this looks a little bit unfortunate out here for car 222, University of Sydney, I think it is, pushing back. So they'll be back down into the shed to see what has not worked.
A beautiful finish on this car. The way that some of these teams have turned out this year, and some of these have been running for quite a while, but the general quality of finish is really
the
high.
level of presentation is mind-boggling. I'm really impressed with all that I've seen.
So RMIT coming in and lining up. This is a beautifully built car. I think they're one of the ones that are going to be competing for the win in this and places, pushing pretty hard. They've got a lot of test time. I know I was speaking to a couple of them before. They're very humble fellas, and just a great bunch of guys and girls on this team. Really hope they manage to get the performance they're chasing this weekend. So Luke, your expertise was sort of aero. There's quite a lot of aero development on this RMIT car. Could you maybe run us through some of your thoughts of it?
Yeah, well, they've definitely upped the complexity game, or most of the teams have actually here, from the early days of the aero. It'd be interesting. I was judging vehicle dynamics through design, but it'd be interesting to have a look at some of the validation and work they've done there on it, because some of that complex stuff you can kind of get a little bit lost in the CFD if you haven't tested it on track or done some other forms of validation on it. But it's very impressive.
Yeah, it's a beautifully built car, and I think the focus on aerodynamics, I mean, way back when, it was very simple when they had what we'd call the big aero rules, where you could run quite a lot in your front wing, quite a lot in your rear wing. You could get pretty much all the downforce that you're going to get really just by blanking off the front wheels and having huge cambered elements on the front. But now they've got pretty serious height restrictions, and the teams are still producing the downforce they were back then, but the aero's got a lot more complicated to do it. So how do you feel that has played into students' aerodynamic knowledge on these cars?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's sort of shown everyone that it is important. You can definitely get a big advantage on it as long as you've got sufficient resources to, hit at least 80-90% on all the rest of the areas of your car. But yeah, it's opened up a whole new avenue of learning, I think, from the perspective of the competition, where the students in the past or earlier years just sort of wrote it off initially and didn't really pursue it, and then they just sort of just missed out on a whole sort of field of learning and engineering. So I think that if you could just plot the average aerodynamics knowledge of the competition over the years, it's definitely massively spiked since 2011 when the new regulations sort of came in.
Yeah, and I think what's really quite interesting about this sort of aerodynamic development, it's so good that they've got proper trailing edges on wings. So the early rules were very restrictive on what you could do with trailing edges, and everything had to be quite blunt. But these are real aerodynamic devices, and the restrictions that they've then placed on heights and widths and so on have really just driven further development. And I think it speaks pretty strongly to sort of performance restrictions and rule restrictions actually driving creativity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I would like to see is a bit of the course layout change a little bit from year to year, so the optimum solution of the sort of the aerodynamics package sort of changes. So I guess you kind of change the performance benefit of downforce versus drag and make that a bit dependent on the course layout. It'd be interesting to see how the students respond with some different designs.
Yeah, I think most teams that are doing well in design are running lap time simulations as a big part of their design process, and you can really see the effect that the track has on what you design. If you've got a very tight, twisty track, that's less favoured to, say, big aero, and making sure you've got, say, a narrow car, something with very high yaw acceleration and real controllability, because cones start to be a problem. And whereas if you've got a bit more open straights, you're going to see a bit of power coming in. If you've got a tight, twisty track, power doesn't really matter at all. You could be running 30 horsepower and still do pretty good lap times. So it really is a compromise there, and I think it's absolutely fantastic to have students playing around with those sorts of tools and seeing the compromises that you make in any vehicle design. So you guys were pretty early in really applying some of this lap time simulations and point simulations, and I think probably the rest of the field has caught up a bit and is playing around with the same sort of tools. Would you say there was anything that when you were running through that really surprised you and was a bit counter-intuitive back in your day?
Surprised me? Yeah, I think so, especially when you're a fresh student and you're not really understanding all the interactions between things. Like when there was the discussion in our team, if we'd move to the single cylinder, then how does that affect like wing sizing? And that really sort of, those sorts of questions are what drove us to really pursue this lap time simulation and build up our tool base there. Because you can't really answer a lot of these problems without it. There's a bit of sort of hand-wavy engineering that you can do, like a bit less power, that means we can't handle as much drag, so I guess that means less downforce, but you can't really put a number on it. There's no real metric to drive your decision making. And once you can develop those sorts of metrics, you can make much better decisions. It's also a lot better for the team harmony, I guess. It even influences sort of those soft aspects where you can actually make everyone agree that, this is the direction we want to go on and why. And there's not really that much room to argue and, yeah. So I think that was one of the biggest surprises to me.
Yeah, really playing off that concept. We looked like we had a bit of a problem there with Griffiths, and not something I would have expected. They really have a lot of attention to detail on their car. But one of the really difficult things I think to come across in these is running these cars is there's thousands of parts on these.
Absolutely. I think it may have been a driveline issue from what I observed. It looked as if it got off the start line a bit and hooked up and got going, and then something's just broken inside the car. So,
and when you've got a really good race car, every part is doing a job, and there's no part that can fail and not affect performance. And so many of the parts, if they go, that's it. The car's not running, and it's a pretty harsh lesson in really chasing reliability in these cars.
And quite often when one part goes, it causes some other damage as well.
But they got a really strong run in early. They've got close to 4.06, I think they had earlier. So they're leaving this event with a good score. And look at that Auckland run. Pretty solid, but again, not really getting that top end. They just haven't got that speed at the end. It was a great launch, but only a 5.02. Now, I think coming up is one of the, universally regarded best-looking cars on the grid. This Canterbury car, I don't think there'd be anybody that disagrees that if there is a best-looking car award, it would be going to Canterbury this year. The level of finish on this car is huge. It's a real credit to the composite work that they've been doing and the attention to detail. And they're running a four-wheel drive AMK motors, which is, I guess, the driveline of choice of the EV cars running through Europe. Not a cheap system to run, but really quite amazing performance out of some of the cars that are running it.
I can't help myself moving.
Yeah, Auckland will need to really address that lack of power at that top end. That's really going to affect them around the track. They'll want an answer for that come autocross time.
That's all you need to do is try. That's all you need to do, bro. That's all I ask.
So we have UQ here.
Try and work out your own...
driver's been lightened.
Was really helpful.
By biological means.
Yeah.
After this one, I'll jump on again.
Well, really, sometimes you've got to save that to be able to speak that later.
Take over again. You don't have to do exactly what I do.
Having a little bit of difficulty keeping the engine going.
Do you know what I mean? Right. But just pick off what I do and turn it into whatever you want. Right. Because nobody's the same, right?
Of course, a lot of these cars are developed right to the bleeding edge of what the bits and pieces are capable of doing. So the occasional failure is inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah, we always hope going into these comps that what we see is a really tight competition with all teams performing at their best. Unfortunately, it doesn't always pan out that way. In fact, it never pans out that way, and there's always people disappointed going home. But I think the thing I love about these competitions is it's never going home going, well, that's all done. It's always, well, let's come back next year and fix it. And it's a pretty common trait amongst these Formula SAE teams.
Great start. Car a little bit twitchy as he heads on down the track, but crosses the line with a 4.47 for the University of Queensland.
Yeah, I think those gear changes looked a little bit slow and probably not at the right time. So there's probably a little bit more in that.
Yeah, question for you, Kevin. Are any of these guys running a micro switch on the gear shift to just cut the ECU and flat shift?
Well, flat shifting is if you've got a auto shifting, so an air shifter, pneumatic or electric, it's very easy to do because you're taking a sort of a button input and you just do a bit of a flat shift there. You don't need to worry as much on a downshift because you've got to really time that, and the timing's not as important. But upshifts, a flat shift will often get you, maybe about 0.05 on a run like this.
Yeah, okay.
So I'd be very surprised if some of the teams are not utilising that. But definitely, if you see somebody with a pneumatic shifter or an electronic shifter, they'll be doing that.
Yep.
We don't have that on the ECU car. Normally these gearboxes are actuated through a Geneva mechanism, so it's a push forward, and it'll ratchet the gear selector mechanism around. So what you've got is you've got a really nominal sort of push forward point, so something that's a constant reference. But the ECU one is a 2-speed, and it's got a forward and a backward, so it's a little bit harder to set up that switch.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that especially that first gear shift is the really critical one. Everything in the first half of the acceleration event is where the time comes from.
University of Canterbury launch, great launch, very quick.
Very
That's
fast.
going to be a good run.
Very good.
Just waiting for 3.85.
So that's now the second fastest time overall, the fastest EV time, only a shade below the ECU time there of 3.82. To see, right now we are looking at a screen that shows 5 teams that have gone under 4 seconds. I mean, if we look back in the history of this competition, to think that we would have been here in 2019 with not just 1 but 5 teams already under 4 seconds, you couldn't have imagined it.
I'm already looking forward to next year.
Well, these are still the same restrictions. All the cars that were doing 4 seconds before, they were still running 20 mil restrictors on them in IC.
Yep.
So the rules around the powertrain have been really quite stable for a long time. So these are real improvements that have been made over the years. We've got UQ lined up again. Oh, really didn't get that launch off well. Looks like there may be a little bit of a problem with the driveline there. Those guys are pretty bright. They're going to come back and have that sorted out pretty quickly.
You'll go and have another feed of pasta. I don't think we're going to drop that for the weekend now. I love the lines on this the University of Canterbury machine. It's just beautiful in every respect.
It really is. It's very reminiscent in design of the European cars. It's a very similar layout, very similar design to what you see of the top teams running in Europe.
Yep.
Running very similar sort of motor configurations, and in terms of the EV class, they're going to be one of the teams to beat. And we've got right behind them the team that'll be trying to beat them with Monash with their electric car have done so well in making that switch, and Canterbury were trying to hold them off. At the moment, they're doing exactly what they need to be doing.
Is this boring you? No. I just like to ask because, like, this.
But unless I'm mistaken, it looks like there might be a little bit more width than in the Monash car. It might be a little bit more aero. So they might have a slight edge on skid pad.
Drag racing, totally different. You'll have earplugs in, like we're watching cars.
And I think what we're also seeing is there's talk of this battle. So we've got 2 EV cars here that are going to be competing for the win in that class. Both running different tyres, both running different motor configurations, different aero, different approaches to their cars, different dampers, sort of different springs. You just see there's 2 competitors here, and if you were in any other form of motorsport, you'd think, are they even in the same class?
You need to be like, just because it's not all V8
So Canterbury pulling back there,
or anything like that,
and Monash going ahead.
you still need to have the driving.
Monash were early leaders in Australia of developing aerodynamics. In fact, one of the early leaders in the world developing aerodynamics, and really carved out an advantage. And by the time they got their team project management and systems and everything sorted out, it was already too late for a lot of the world who hadn't quite realised the advantage they were losing on aero. I think I can remember in the early days, Monash were out as early as 2002 when Carol Smith was down judging, and he said, the first team to do aero properly was going to walk away with this competition, and he said that Monash were probably one of the teams that he thought were there. It took them a few years to sort out their processes and get their teams ready, and they've really showed exactly what the great Carol Smith said back then.
Yeah, I saw some of the earlier cars with their aero on it and with the guys testing, and they did do a lot of testing, but the car seems to have petered, made a great little launch, but has got nothing as it gets further down the track. So they'll be retrieving that car and doing a bit of work on it. So,
well, these electric motors have all sorts of automatic cutouts, temperature cutouts, and so on. And I think that's what we heard from Adelaide is just the electric cars do have a little bit of an issue at that launch phase, making sure that they can have the right control there, and I'm assuming not spin up too quickly. And that's a big advantage that Canterbury have with that four-wheel drive, is they're not doing all of their drive on those rear wheels. They don't need as much wheel spin from it. They don't need get the weight transfer rearwards. They can just get a good start, and that launch advantage, you see that really play out. great launch by RMIT there.
Wow.
Good gear changes, good speed.
Yeah, that was a good run.
And a 3.8358. That is 0.01 off the ECU time. Second fastest in IC. What a run from RMIT. I told you early on, Phil, I think this is going to be one of the teams to beat. They're really well prepared. They're a great
Absolutely.
team.
It was a great run. And it's so visual from the side of the track here where we are, Kevin, that you can just see these cars. The ones that are doing a quick run, it's just so obvious.
Yeah, and I think that was a quick run. You really saw there. I think the difference that we're seeing with both that Monash run and that RMIT run, as opposed to, I guess, the ECU run, is they're just getting absolutely everything out of the car. They're getting a solid launch. That second phase is there. I'm going to go out and have a talk to the RMIT guys if they're pushing through, but I think they might be getting another run. They're pretty excited, and so they should be. Oh, look, we've got the Japanese team back here, the Honda Technical College, going for another run.
Good launch, quite small engine power, I suspect there, Kevin.
Yeah. I think they're still having issues. Now, if you are nearby, you need to have a look at this run. RMIT are only 0.01 off taking the lead in the acceleration event. This could be the run that takes the lead. So if you're anywhere near the acceleration, come and have a look at this car. Cheer them on. That is an impressive machine.
Sadly, Kevin, I'm not able to remember any of the times from last year. It would be interesting to know what sort of comparative times we have between last year and this.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, I think the winning time last year in IC was about a 4.1. It was not what we're seeing this today. I think it's not perfect conditions for doing these runs. And we see here two cars in Monash and RMIT with similar engines, very different tyres, and still doing similar times.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the mixture of compromise can end up with the same answer, or very near to.
They look like they're staged pretty far back from those cones, so I don't know whether that's staging on the door ends or whether they're...
Great launch again.
I think this might be it.
Oh, that is
3.757. That is, as far as I'm aware, the record acceleration run at Formula SAE-A. What a run.
That was an absolute ripper.
So I'm going out here.
Team are not at all happy.
Going to try and get the RMIT guys. Hey, fellas, can we get a bit of a what do you think of that? Okay, we're going to try and get the driver on that. That's an amazing run. Record time at a Formula SAE-A event. We haven't seen times like that before.
Just in the between there, the Honda Technical team a little slower there, 6.10.
Okay, I'll just stop you here. Yeah. Okay, you've just gone out there and put in the record time for Formula SAE-A acceleration run. So it looks like you lost a little bit of performance there. How are you going to do it better next time?
I went short shift.
There you go, a 3.75 with the short shift. Are you guys feeling pretty confident for this event? You put a bit of time in. How does this lift you up and get you fired up for the rest of the comp?
God damn, it feels good.
Yeah, well done. God damn, it feels good. Well done, fellas.
That's excellent stuff. I'm really pleased to see the team so happy. Let's hope that they're able to continue that thrill of the event right through to the end of it. Very fast and very twitchy down. RMIT down at the end of 3.8 on that run with the other car.
So RMIT there are now got the 2 fastest times in the whole acceleration event. A 3.75 for their IC car and a 3.80 for their electric car. There you go, RMIT. What a run.
And I don't know, Kevin, whether you saw that car under brakes at the far end, but he was left and right and twitching around all over the place as car 15 heads on his way down the track, University of Canberra, with a 4.60. And the RMIT electric car going back out for another run.
Yeah, absolutely. What a run. I mean, they're currently in dynamics running first in both classes.
Jason's switching up there as well.
Well, I think we're seeing the records drop. We now have, if I count this correctly, 6 teams who have gone under 4 seconds on acceleration.
Plenty of time on this camera, brother. Plenty of time. That's what you should have done, actually. It would have been easier for you to go up
Okay, so the electric car back out to the start.
Because then you would get an idea. Huh?
Just a note to everyone, the acceleration event does stop at 11:30.
Not as good a start, but wow, that car has got some hook up and go. 3.89 on that run.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I don't think that the RMIT guys are at all concerned. They've got the 2 fastest times in the competition. Both of them have edged out that ECU run. And that just goes to show, we thought when we saw that ECU run take down Monash that could have been it, and RMIT have just come and blown that away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a .07 on an acceleration event, that's not a small gap, that is a massive margin. A huge achievement by that team. It's always good to take home the silverware, Phil.
Oh yeah, or even the goldware.
Even the underwear, Phil.
Oh, you've got to take the underwear home, preferably unstained.
Well, I'm not sure that's going to hold true for those RMIT guys with the wiggly braking at the end.
Yeah, I think there may have been a quick message scribbled to their mum on the inside of the undies.
As we tell our kids, skid marks are for the street, not for your undies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Huh? No.
Well, I've just had the eye roll from my preteen daughter here. It's a fantastic thing actually jumping on commentary and look at this.
Wow. Oh, this is a good run.
Again,
ran out of
end.
puff towards the end.
But a 4.26, that's a pretty solid run from Auckland there. They've got to be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, they have, especially when the car just sort of seemed to run out of steam before it got to the end. So there's more left in that car if they're able to come back. Now, we're probably running out of time, Kevin. Do you know what time we're due to finish here?
11:30, we're due to close the event. But it looks like most teams who are going to run have run. Yeah, it's fantastic. As I was saying, Phil, it's fantastic to do this commentary. My daughter's here. It sort of believes that I'm pretty uncool, and for her to have that proven and to know that she's right about that is
it's something
really
you
good.
take home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how children can turn us into the most uncool people at the most inopportune times sometimes.
Oh, look, I'm loving this, Phil. I'm loving the competitiveness. I'm loving that just each team is putting it up. There's a few teams vying. It looks like in that combustion class that there might be a bit of a 3-way battle going on at the moment in this event.
And I'm sure that those that are involved in strategies behind the scenes are going to be going, okay, so we're down here. What are the elements of our car that are superior, and how are we going to claw back?
And that is a great run by UNSW. So that's a 4.41 for them. That's a really good run.
Good stuff.
Well done, guys. So I think you've got to clap that car as that comes in. That was a great run from Adfa there.
We've got the University of Adelaide back out again. I'm assuming with a different driver this time around.
And I think these Adfas coming in now. That was a fantastic run by them. Adelaide, we'll see how they go with the wheel spin. Oh, less wheel spin. Look at that tail end speed.
That hooked up towards the end of the
And that is
track.
a 4 flat from University of Adelaide there. Adelaide University, what a run. That is a huge improvement of where they were earlier on.
Yeah, I can.
I don't know what changes they've made on the computer. That was about a half a second change.
No, I'm fine.
Perhaps they've just got too and excited the electrons in the charge unit.
Well, they're saying this is the second time they've run an electric car, and I think this is just showing that, you know, electric is this competition now. We've pretty quickly moved over to a point where the electric cars are more reliable, higher performance, and they're just starting to be the class you'd want to be running in. It's a real change up from where we started 20 years ago with this comp. And we're celebrating, I keep saying the 20th because we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of this event.
That's right.
An amazing achievement. There's so many students that have gone through, so many cars that have been built, so many hearts that have been broken.
Great start.
Great start again. Oh, still in that midline. And a 4.30. I really feel if they can get that second half of that, that's easily a 4.
Yeah.
They're just losing so much on the second half. It won't affect them in the skid pad today, but it's probably something they're going to want fixed for when they come out to autocross tomorrow. We're starting to get towards the end of the competition, or this particular part of the competition now. Only 10 more minutes to go in this event. We haven't seen some of the teams come out. Scrutineering is always a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to build a car in a year and to have it run and compete well.
Especially if just a few days ago you had something break and you've got to rebuild it.
Yeah, I think it's just a solid lesson always. You never give up in this competition.
Good run. The car pulls on very good towards the end of the track there for the University of Adelaide.
A 4.11, so didn't do any better than that first run, but you really see that once it's in that sort of range, and that's going to be the speed range they're running in autocross. They've got a huge amount of pull in that car, so I'd be expecting pretty good times from them once they get out onto the track. We have Monash lined up with their electric car. They wouldn't have been happy with that previous run. More solid launch, and it stays in it. Bit of speed there. And a 3.99. Another team has dropped in under 4 seconds. So we have currently 7 cars that have gone under 4 seconds. I don't think we've seen anything like this in this competition.
And Griffith University coming back out to the start line there. They had the unfortunate bit of a run there last time they tried. So hopefully they're able to get this.
Yeah, these were the team that they did a 4.06 earlier on in this event. So we might just see an 8th car dropping in under 4. I think what we're seeing here is the standard for this event is clearly dropped. I meant the times have clearly dropped. But a bog start there from Griffith, and unfortunately a 4.28. It just shows the potential of that car, that it managed a 4.28 even with a pretty bog start. So I'd say that car is capable of going under 4. They won't be overly happy that they didn't manage to get that sub-4 time, but they do have a good competitive time in that 4.06. And I know that team, they're good drivers. They're going to be out there and they're going to be hard to beat when it comes to autocross and endurance.
Now, what's your call on this, Kevin? If you're out there as a driver and you're on the start line, you've dropped the clutch, you feel you've got a little bit too much wheel spin, do you lift your foot or do you leave it where it is and say, just let it gather its momentum and then get going?
No, you leave it where it is, Phil. But I think with a lot of these cars, you're actually running launch control on them. And so they become a case of playing around with those launch control settings and getting it quite right. And the conditions change throughout a run. So as you find that as the event goes on, there's a little bit more grip, a little bit more temp. You need to change the settings to just eke out that last little bit. But yeah, you normally just keep your foot right in it. The main thing the driver has to do is is get a reasonable clutch release and make sure that they nail that first gear change. Once you get that first gear change, you're pretty well on your way to a good run. These cars are amazingly fun to drive. I drove myself as a student for about 4 years.
Okay.
And did a few events with them. Never did an acceleration event. Was always an autocross and endurance driver. But they are a good fun to get off the line. I drove one of the ECU cars a while back, and the amount of push that you get in the acceleration event, that extra 0.2, 0.3 of a second on what I used to do as a student, it's really noticeable.
You're finding it hard to give up the seat. At least we've got a start this time.
That's a great launch by University of Sydney there with a 4.71. So they've got a time on the board. Well done to them. They'd be wanting a little bit more than that, but I guess they'll come back. Yeah, I don't hop in the seat very often these days, Phil. Only the old cars occasionally, and they're good fun cars to drive. They're unlike anything else out there in motorsport terms. They're just so agile on the track.
Yeah, I'd be happy to sit my backside and run them one day and have a little bit of a try.
Well, back earlier on, there used to be no template rules on the chassis. So some of the chassis we built, you could barely move in them. So as people were really trying to squash the driver in and give the driver as little space as possible for those grams that really didn't make a difference. But these days with the templates, the cars are a lot easier to sit in and drive. It's ergonomics. The students focused a lot on the ergonomics, and I think the cars of today are far easier to drive than the cars of earlier in the comp. But to go with that, they're also noticeably faster, so you have to do everything a lot quicker than you used to do.
Yeah. Probably one of the most uncomfortable cars that I've had to get into, but it was comfortable when I was in there, was a Rolt RT4 that I was given a drive of only a year or two ago. Very nice once you're in there, but getting in and out was quite difficult.
Well, Ron Tornak, obviously the RT and the Rolts, he was a design judge here at the competition for quite a few years. And it was absolutely fantastic getting to talk with him, and not many people know how successful Australians have been in motorsport, and Ron was an amazing fella.
Absolutely.
Very humble guy, but if you look in the history of motorsport, he's the most successful supplier of race cars to customer race cars in the world. The Rolts have had a huge amount of success, and people sort of remember him a lot for the Brabham days, and often sort of overlook some of the Rolt days.
There we go. In car 63 launches off the start line. Good launch, but seemed to be not quite as quick down towards the end of the track. The University of New South Wales, Sydney.
Yeah, they got 4.13, which is a solid improvement.
It is. It's a good time.
And they've just edged out Curtin with that time, so they'll be pretty happy with that.
And we've got Griffith University back to the start line.
Yeah, Griffith here, they will definitely be going for trying to get under that 4. And that's not what they would have wanted, Phil.
No, absolutely not. I sort of looked away at the wrong time and missed what went on there, Kevin.
Yeah, just really lost it in that mid phase. You can see, I think, if you're spectating here, the phases that we're talking about, you see that initial bite, so that wheel spin initial bite, and then really before you even hit the first cone is the second stage of this acceleration, and during those stages the car was doing quite well.
Yep.
And then you hit sort of around about a third down the track and there was just nothing there. So that's the concerning time, because that's the region you're driving in the rest of the competition. This is the only event where the launch really plays a huge effect. It is important to get a decent launch in autocross, but it doesn't really affect the times anywhere near as much as it does in this event. So this is the only place that a car has to do that launch, and we call it an acceleration test, but it's more of a launch test.
Yeah, very true. Of course, if you're got some friends out at home and you want them to see what's going on, you can send them to YouTube and look for In Pit Lane, and they will be able to follow live stream the event here today. So a big thank you to In Pit Lane for their contribution to the event.
Yeah, this is amazing to see the live feed of this. I love watching the video. There's a lot of Formula SAE fans around the world.
Good run there.
That's a
from
great solid run. A 4.62.
4.62. That would be their best run, I think, so far.
Yep, they'll be happy with that. They had problems earlier on, so coming out and putting a decent time on the board, they'll be happy. We see Curtin coming up pretty soon, and they'll be trying to see if they could get a 4 flat or maybe just go under the 4s. They've had a bit of history of doing well in the acceleration event, so they won't be happy where they're standing at the moment. But lined up we have UQ, and this car is about, I think, the only car that might have a chance of knocking up that RMIT EV time. They were doing 3.8s earlier in the day. It's a lot warmer now. The launch area is sort of being cleaned up a bit by all the cars, so if they're going to do it, this is the time for them to do it.
So they're just waiting for the all clear to be able to give him the green flag to start.
Yeah, right at the tail end, there's only 4 cars out here at the moment.
I might just take a moment, Kevin, to thank all of the officials. There's so many people involved. It's a great thing for them to have done. Oh, no. I think I heard some clattering coming from the back of that car too.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what happened to the Monash car. They got that really good first stage, but as soon as it's into the second stage of acceleration, it's just died on them. They've got a great time, so there's nothing that they're really having to chase here. They're the third fastest EV car. And really the difference in time is not going to mean a lot of difference in points. And while we're chasing sort of wins and places here, at the end of the day, this comp is based on points, not times.
Absolutely.
And so if you're not losing many points to the teams ahead of you, you're less concerned.
Yeah, if you can maintain a good head of points in all the aspects of the competition, you may well take it out overall.
Yeah, absolutely, and every team has their hiccups along the way. Nobody's particularly, there's only a few teams that are overjoyed with the performance they get in any one event. But it's a long weekend. There's a lot of events that come into this. There's the static events and the dynamic events, and one busted run. If you drop your head after one busted run, the weekend can slip away from you. You just got to keep pushing. Not that we really need to tell this to any of the teams here who've pushed so hard to get cars that are running. Oh, a solid run there.
Yeah, good start. Wow, that all the way through.
That's a great run. 4.11. Oh, that car's definitely got a sub 4 in it somewhere.
Yeah, it's just so close.
And Queensland UQ pushing away now. So we're seeing the last of the runs. Curtin here are going to try and jump up that IC rankings a bit. At the moment, they're it looks like the 6th place IC car. If they can grab a couple of other placings, a couple more points, they'll be pretty happy. And they've gone back, spent a bit of time on the car, obviously trying to address the issue they had last time.
And a little bit of pasta. Waiting for the launch.
You see, look at that.
That rear spin again. Yeah, and it just doesn't seem to get away. Is that the traction control, the launch control, sorry, that you were talking about? Just overloading the machine off the start line.
Well, I don't know what's going on there. I think they won't be spinning the right-hand wheel. I think they're just losing the inside, what the wheel we're seeing. I've got to have a good look at this car. They have run a CVT in the past. I don't know if they're running a CVT now. That's very odd behaviour off the line. It shouldn't affect them once they're going around the track.
Yeah.
It won't affect them in the rest of the events. But they certainly won't be happy with that. Well, that was a 7.4 seconds to put it in perspective. The best run so far has been a 4.1 or 4.2, around that sort of region.
Around about, yeah.
We thank them for their support of Formula SAE and RMITV student
So
television.
you can see with these Hoosiers, these are the higher sidewalls on these Hoosiers compared to the sort of shorter sidewalls we've seen on the new ones. So it is an older tyre. You know, you've got to make a pretty hard call. If you switch to a lower profile tyre, there's a lot of changes you make to the car, and they've stuck with these profile, and we'll see how that goes for them this weekend.
Yeah, now I think this event is closed, so a big thank you to all of those who've taken part and been spectators along the wall here for the acceleration test. And we might take a small break, Kevin, and some of us will be back later on over at the skid pad.
Yeah, over at the skid pad, and I'll see you then.
I feel better today. I'm doing what I don't like and I'm doing nothing. And nobody tells you what to do. And you're quite good about it. I don't mind to run.
In Pit Lane's coverage of the 2019 Formula SAE Australasia competition has been made possible by RMIT University. We thank them for their support of Formula SAE and RMITV student television.
Do you have like, of course you're not going to count, but you almost for 1 year, right, on camera?
To a certain extent, yeah.
Almost a year. Yeah, yeah. I can stay here like all day. No, not really a problem.
Change of plans. Change plans, yep. You were supposed to be with me now. Remember going to the pits to do grabs? Oh, yep, of course. Yeah, wakey. Change of plans. Take us out the half-hour lunch now, then we do it. Yeah. What are you doing? Are we going to do some interviews? Oh, it's just Jason and I.
Hi, Stuart.
You can come down now.
Exactly. I was going to say, I finished 4.5 minutes ago.
Let's go back, come down. When you see them all packing up, you don't need to stay there.
Okay. And the camera?
Throw me the radio.
Camera will stay here.
Throw me the radio.
Are you sure?
Come here and drop the radio.
All right.
Just drop the radio to me, bro. Chuck it. Stuart. You there, Stuart? Do you want me to put this camera and then you stuff it and I can stuff it?
I have a lot to thank Ford for, because my first job out of university, when I finished my last exam, I did an exam in the morning, and in the afternoon I started work at the Ford Motor Company as a computer